Welcome to the Cheating Tales Lab. We hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The first hint that something was off came on a Tuesday evening. I'd just gotten home from a grueling 14-hour shift at the oil rig, dead on my feet and craving nothing more than a hot shower and my wife's warm embrace. But when I walked through the door, the house was dark and empty. "Susan," I called out, flicking on lights as I made my way through our modest ranch-style home. No answer. I pulled out my phone, ready to call her, when I noticed a text from earlier. "Girls' night out. Don't wait up. XO." I frowned, tossing my phone onto the kitchen counter with more force than necessary. This was the third girls' night this month. Since when did Susan have so many friends to go out with? And on a Tuesday, no less? Shaking off the nagging feeling in my gut, I grabbed a beer from the fridge and collapsed onto the couch. "It's fine," I told myself. "She's allowed to have a social life. Just because I work long hours doesn't mean she has to sit at home waiting for me." But as the days turned into weeks, that nagging feeling grew into a gnawing anxiety I couldn't shake. Susan grew more distant, spending less time at home and offering only vague explanations for her frequent absences. When we were together, she seemed distracted, often glued to her phone with a small smile playing at her lips. I tried to dismiss it as paranoia. After all, I'd never been the jealous type. Susan and I had been happily married for 8 years. Why would that suddenly change? But no matter how much I tried to rationalize it away, the unease persisted. It all came to a head on a sunny Saturday afternoon. I was cleaning out my truck, getting ready for a fishing trip with my buddy Randolph the next day. As I vacuumed under the passenger seat, something caught my eye, a crumpled receipt wedged in the crevice between the seat and the center console. Curious, I fished it out and smoothed it flat. My blood ran cold as I read the details. A receipt from the Riverside Inn and Suites, dated for a weekend 3 weeks ago when Susan had claimed to be visiting her sister in the next state over. For a long moment, I just stared at that damning piece of paper, my mind refusing to accept what it was telling me. But as the initial shock wore off, a cold fury began to build in my chest. I'd been played for a fool. I stormed into the house, ready to confront Susan, but she wasn't home. Of course she wasn't. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to think rationally. I needed more evidence before I confronted her. If she was cheating, and God, I hoped I was wrong. I needed to be smart about this. I called Randolph, my voice tight as I explained the situation. "I need your help, man," I said. "I think Susan's been lying to me, and I need to know for sure." Randolph let out a low whistle. "Shit, Jason, that's heavy. What do you need?" "You're the tech whiz," I said. "Is there a way I can, I don't know, track her phone or something? See who she's been talking to?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You sure about this, Jay? Once you go down this road." "I'm sure." I cut him off, my voice hard. "I need to know the truth, Randolph, whatever it is." He sighed. "All right, man. I'll be over in an hour. We'll figure this out." True to his word, Randolph showed up with a laptop and an expression. He walked me through installing spyware on Susan's phone while she was out running errands. It felt wrong, invasive, but I squashed down the guilt. If she had nothing to hide, she had nothing to fear. The next few days were torture. I went through the motions at work, my mind constantly on what might be happening on Susan's phone. When I got home each night, I'd lock myself in my home office, poring over the data Randolph's program had collected. At first, it was nothing too incriminating, just a lot of texts and calls to a number I didn't recognize. But then came the photos, intimate shots, clearly not meant for my eyes. And finally, the smoking gun, a voice note from Susan to someone named Clive Adams. "I miss you already," Susan's voice purred through my computer speakers. "Last night was amazing. I can't wait to see you again, baby. I love you." I sat there, stunned, as the magnitude of her betrayal washed over me. It wasn't just a fling or a one-time mistake. She was in love with this man. How long had this been going on? How many times had she lied to my face, kissed me goodbye, and then run into his arms? The rage that had been simmering for days finally boiled over. I slammed my fist into the desk, relishing the sharp pain that shot through my hand. It was nothing compared to the agony in my chest. I don't remember much of what happened next. I know I drank a lot. I know I destroyed some things in my office, smashing picture frames and hurling books across the room. And I know that when Susan came home that night, finding me sitting in the dark living room with a tumbler of whiskey in my hand, she knew the jig was up. "Jason," she said hesitantly, flicking on the light. "What's wrong? Why are you sitting in the dark?" I looked up at her, taking in the woman I thought I knew. She was beautiful, my Susan, long chestnut hair, bright green eyes, a smile that could light up a room. How many times had that smile been a lie? "Sit down," I said, my voice gravelly from the whiskey and unshed tears. "We need to talk." She paled, clearly sensing the storm that was about to break. "Jason, whatever you think, sit down," I growled, leaving no room for argument. She sank into the armchair across from me, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "What's this about?" Instead of answering, I pulled out my phone and hit play on the damning voice note. Susan's voice filled the room, professing her love for another man. All the color drained from her face as she listened. When it was over, she opened her mouth, likely to spew some bullshit excuse, but I cut her off. "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "Don't you dare try to lie your way out of this. I know everything, Susan. I've seen the texts, the photos. I know about your weekend getaways with this Clive asshole when you were supposed to be visiting your sister." Tears sprang to her eyes. "Jason, please listen." "Listen to what?" I roared, surging to my feet. The whiskey glass shattered against the fireplace as I hurled it across the room. "Listen to how you've been fucking another man for God knows how long. Explain how you've been lying to my face every single day. Go ahead, Susan. I'm all ears." She flinched at my outburst, shrinking back in her chair. I'm sorry," she whimpered. "I never meant for this to happen. It started as a harmless flirtation and then what?" I demanded. "You just fell into bed with him? Fell in love with him? How long has this been going on, Susan?" She couldn't meet my eyes. A year," she whispered. The words hit me like a physical blow. A year, 12 months of lies and betrayal. I felt sick. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "What did I do wrong? What does he have that I don't?" "Nothing," she insisted, finally looking up at me. "You didn't do anything wrong, Jason. It's not about you, Don't give me that bullshit." I snapped. "This has everything to do with me. You made a vow, Susan, for better or worse, remember? Was that all a lie, too?" She shook her head frantically. "No, of course not. I love you, Jason. I do. It's just, Clive, he made me feel alive again, desired. I know it's no excuse, but you're right." I cut her off coldly. "It's not an excuse. Nothing you can say will excuse this." We lapsed into silence, the weight of her betrayal hanging heavy between us. I paced the living room. I tried to process everything. Susan remained in her chair, silent tears streaming down her face. Finally, I turned to face her. "Is there anything else I should know?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "Any other bombs you'd like to drop?" She hesitated, and I knew there was more. "What is it?" I demanded. Susan took a shaky breath. I'm pregnant," she whispered. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her, but the look on her face confirmed it. My wife was pregnant, and she didn't know if the baby was mine. The room spun around me as the full impact of her words hit home. I stumbled back, collapsing onto the couch as my legs gave out. "Jason," Susan's voice sounded far away. "Jason, please say something." I looked up at her, this stranger wearing my wife's face. In that moment, I felt nothing but cold, hard hatred. Get out, I said quietly. She blinked confused. What? I said get out. I roared, surging to my feet. Get the fuck out of my house. I can't even look at you right now. Susan scrambled to her feet, backing away from me. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, her voice small and scared. I don't give a damn, I spat. Go to your sister's. Go to a hotel. Or better yet, go run to your precious Clive. Just get out of my sight before I do something I'll regret. She hesitated for a moment, then fled upstairs. I heard her moving around, packing a bag. 10 minutes later, she came back down, her eyes red and puffy. Jason, please. She tried one last time. Can't we talk about this? I didn't even look at her. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Now live with it. The front door opened and closed, and just like that, she was gone. I stood there in the silence of our once happy home, feeling like my entire world had just imploded. As the adrenaline of the confrontation wore off, exhaustion hit me like a freight train. I trudged upstairs to our bedroom, my bedroom now, I suppose, and collapsed onto the bed. Sleep didn't come easily, but when it did, it was filled with nightmares of Susan in another man's arms. The next few days passed in a blur of anger, pain, and far too much whiskey. I called in sick to work, unable to face the thought of pretending everything was normal. Instead, I holed up in the house, ignoring calls and texts from concerned friends and family. It was my mother who finally broke through my self-imposed isolation. On the third day of my bender, she showed up at the house, armed with Tupperware containers full of food and a determined glint in her eye. Jason Michael Cooper, she called out as she let herself in with her spare key. I know you're in here. You can't hide from your mother. I groaned from my position on the couch, an empty bottle of Jack cradled against my chest. Go away, Mom, I mumbled. I'm not fit for company. She appeared in the doorway of the living room, taking in the mess with a critical eye. Empty bottles littered the coffee table, and the acrid smell of stale cigarette smoke hung in the air. Oh, Jason, she sighed, her face softening with sympathy. What has that woman done to you? Before I could protest, she was hauling me off the couch and steering me towards the bathroom. You're going to take a shower, she announced firmly, and then you're going to eat something that isn't liquid and 80 proof. After that, we'll talk. I knew better than to argue with my mother when she used that tone. 20 minutes later, freshly showered and feeling marginally more human, I sat at the kitchen table while Mom bustled around, reheating some of her famous chicken noodle soup. Now then, she said, setting a steaming bowl in front of me. Tell me everything. So I did. I poured out the whole sordid tale of my suspicions, the evidence I'd gathered, Susan's confession, and the bombshell about her pregnancy. Mom listened without interrupting, her face growing stormier with each new revelation. When I finished, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, she said softly. You didn't deserve any of this. What am I going to do, Mom? I asked, hating how small and lost my voice sounded. How am I supposed to just move on from this? She was quiet for a moment, considering. You take it one day at a time, she said finally. And you remember that you're not alone in this. You've got me. You've got your friends. We'll get you through this. As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. Mom went to answer it, returning a moment later with Shelley, Susan's mother, in tow. I tensed, expecting a confrontation. But to my surprise, Shelley marched right up to me and enveloped me in a fierce hug. I am so sorry, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know where I went wrong with that girl, but please believe me when I say I never raised her to do something like this. I awkwardly patted her back, unsure how to respond. When she pulled away, her eyes were blazing with righteous anger. I've half a mind to drive over to that sister of mine and drag Susan back here by her hair, she declared. Make her face what she's done. Shelley, my mom said warningly, That's not going to help anyone right now. Shelley deflated slightly. You're right, of course. I can't believe she would do this. To throw away a good man like Jason for some homewrecker. I cleared my throat, uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. Have you talked to Susan? I asked hesitantly. Shelley's face darkened. Oh, I've talked to her all right. That girl is lucky I didn't tan her hide like I did when she was little. Pregnant or not, she's still not too old for a good spanking in my book. Despite everything, I felt a small smile tugging at my lips. Shelley had always been a force of nature, and it was oddly comforting to know that some things hadn't changed. The conversation was interrupted by another knock at the door. This time, it was Randolph, looking worried and slightly out of breath. Sorry to barge in, he said as he entered the kitchen. I've been trying to reach you for days, man. You okay? I nodded, grateful for his concern. I'm surviving, I said. Thanks for coming by. Randolph pulled up a chair, nodding respectfully to my mom and Shelley. So, what's the plan? He asked, getting right to the point. What do you want to do about all this? I sighed. Honestly, I have no fucking clue. I can't even wrap my head around all of this yet. Well, the first thing you need to do is get a paternity test, Shelley said firmly. If that baby isn't yours, you shouldn't be on the hook for it. I nodded slowly. It was a logical next step, but the thought of it made my stomach churn. Yeah, you're right. I'll call the doctor tomorrow, set something up. And you need to talk to a lawyer, Mom added. Even if you decide to try and work things out, you need to protect yourself. The thought of reconciliation hadn't even crossed my mind. The mere suggestion of it sent a fresh wave of anger coursing through me. There's nothing to work out, I said coldly. She made her choice. Now she can live with the consequences. An uncomfortable silence fell over the kitchen. Finally, Randolph spoke up. Whatever you decide to do, man, I've got your back. We all do. I looked around at the people gathered in my kitchen, my mother-in-law, my best friend, all of them here to support me, no questions asked. For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I could get through this after all. Thank you, I said, my voice rough with emotion. All of you. I don't know what I'd do without you. Over the next few days, with the support of my impromptu team, I started to pull myself together. Mom practically moved in, making sure I was eating and taking care of myself. Randolph helped me gather all the evidence we'd collected and organize it for the lawyer. And Shelley, bless her, took it upon herself to run interference with Susan, fielding her calls and attempts to contact me. A week after the confrontation, I found myself sitting in a sterile doctor's office, waiting for the results of the paternity test. Susan sat across the room, looking pale and drawn. We hadn't spoken a word to each other since she'd arrived. The doctor entered, a somber expression on his face. My heart sank before he even opened his mouth. I knew what he was going to say. Mr. Cooper, he began, his voice gentle. I'm afraid the test results show that you are not the biological father of Mrs. Cooper's child. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd suspected it. Hearing it confirmed made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I closed my eyes, fighting back the wave of nausea that threatened to overwhelm me. Across the room, Susan let out a choked sob. Jason, she pleaded. Jason, please look at me. I opened my eyes, fixing her with a cold stare. What do you want me to say, Susan? Congratulations? I hope you and Clive are very happy together. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. It's not like that, she insisted. Jason, I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. We can work through this. Please, just give me another chance. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that seemed to surprise even me. Another chance? Are you kidding me? You threw away 8 years of marriage for a quick fuck with some rich asshole. And now you're carrying his child. There are no more chances, Susan. We're done. Without another word, I stood and walked out of the office, ignoring Susan's tearful pleas behind me. I made it to my truck before the shock wore off and the anger set in. With a roar of frustration, I slammed my fist into the steering wheel, again and again until the pain in my hand matched the agony in my chest. I don't remember the drive home. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in my living room, a bottle of whiskey in hand, staring at the wall of photos that chronicled our life together. 8 years of memories, all tainted now by her betrayal. In a fit of rage, I stood and began tearing the photos off the wall, smashing frames and ripping up the images of our smiling, oblivious faces. By the time I was done, the floor was littered with broken glass and torn paper, a fitting metaphor for the wreckage of my marriage. It was in this state that Randolph found me, slumped on the floor amidst the debris, the now empty whiskey bottle dangling from my fingers. "Jesus, Jay," he muttered, carefully picking his way through the mess. "Come on, man. Let's get you cleaned up." As he helped me to my feet, I looked at him blearily. "She's pregnant with his kid, Randy." I slurred. "What the fuck am I supposed to do now?" Randolph's face hardened. "You're going to pull yourself together," he said firmly. "And then we're going to make sure that bitch and her lover pay for what they've done to you." His words cut through the alcohol-induced haze, igniting a spark of something dangerous inside me. "You're right," I said, my voice low and determined. "No more feeling sorry for myself. It's time to fight back." The next morning, nursing a killer hangover but fueled by a newfound determination, I met Randolph at a small diner on the outskirts of town. We needed privacy for what we were about to discuss. "All right," I said after we'd ordered coffee and made sure no one was within earshot. "What do we know about this Clive Adams?" Randolph pulled out his laptop, his fingers flying over the keys. "I did some digging," he said. "Clive Adams, 42 years old, CEO of Adams Enterprises, a real estate development company. He's got a reputation as a bit of a playboy, but nothing concrete has ever stuck to him." I scowled. "So he makes a habit of this? Seducing married women?" Randolph nodded. "Looks like it. I found at least 3 other women in similar situations over the past 5 years. He wines and dines them, convinces them to leave their husbands, and then, well, let's just say things don't end well for the women." My hands clenched into fists. "That son of a bitch," I growled. "He's going to pay for this. Both of them are." "I'm with you, man," Randolph said. "But we need to be smart about this. Clive's got money and connections. We can't just go after him directly." I nodded, forcing myself to think rationally. "You're right. We need more information, more evidence of what he's been up to." For the next few hours, we pored over everything Randolph had managed to dig up on Clive Adams. Bank records, business dealings, social media posts, anything that might give us an edge. As we were wrapping up, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it, my eyebrows raising as I read the message. "What is it?" Randolph asked, noticing my expression. I showed him the phone. "It's from someone named Clifton Loomis. Says he's a journalist and wants to talk to me about Clive Adams." Randolph frowned. "Think it's legit?" I shrugged. "Only one way to find out." I called the number and a gruff voice answered. "Clifton Loomis here." "This is Jason Cooper," I said. "You wanted to talk about Clive Adams?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Not over the phone," Loomis said finally. "Meet me at the Blue Moon Cafe in an hour. Come alone." The line went dead before I could respond. I looked at Randolph, who nodded. "Go," he said. "I'll keep digging. But be careful, man. We don't know who this guy is or what he wants." An hour later, I was sitting in a booth at the Blue Moon Cafe, nursing a cup of coffee and trying not to look as nervous as I felt. A man slid into the seat across from me mid-50s, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of face that had seen its fair share of hard living. "Jason Cooper?" he asked, his voice matching the one I'd heard on the phone. I nodded. "Clifton Loomis, I presume?" He grunted in affirmation, then leaned forward, his voice low. "I hear you've got a beef with Clive Adams." I tensed. How do you know about that? Lo mi smirket. I'm a journalist, kid. It's my job to know things. I've been tracking Adams for years, trying to nail the bastard. But he's slippery, always one step ahead. So, why come to me? I asked, still wary. Because you've got something I need, Loomis said. Personal experience. A first-hand account of how Adams operates. And I'm guessing you want something to revenge. I studied him for a long moment, weighing my options. Finally, I nodded. All right, I'm listening. What do you propose? Loomis outlined his plan to expose that would blow the lid off Clive's operations, revealing not just his philandering ways, but also some of his shadier business dealings. All he needed was my story to tie it all together. I can't promise it'll fix everything, Loomis said, but it'll sure as hell make life difficult for Adams. Might even bring him down altogether. I thought about Susan, about the baby she was carrying, about the life I thought we had together. Then I thought about Clive Adams, smug and self-assured, thinking he could take whatever he wanted without consequences. I'm in, I said, my voice hard with determination. Let's take this bastard down. Over the next few weeks, Loomis, Randolph, and I worked tirelessly, gathering evidence and building our case against Clive Adams. We uncovered a pattern of behavior that was truly sickening, not just the affairs, but financial fraud, intimidation tactics, even hints of violence against women who threatened to expose him. Through it all, Susan tried repeatedly to contact me. Calls, texts, even showing up at the house once or twice. Each time, I shut her down cold. I wasn't interested in her excuses or her tears. As far as I was concerned, she was just as guilty as Clive. It was Randolph who finally pointed out the obvious. You know, he said one night as we were going over some financial records, Susan might be our ace in the hole. She knows things about Clive that could be crucial to bringing him down. I balked at the idea of involving her, but I had to admit Randolph had a point. Swallowing my pride, I agreed to meet with Susan. We met at a neutral location, a park near our old house. Susan was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench, her hands resting on her slightly swollen belly. The sight of her pregnancy made my chest tighten, but I pushed the feeling aside. Jason, she said, standing as I approached. Thank you for meeting me. I cut her off. Save it, I said coldly. I'm not here for reconciliation. I need information about Clive Adams. Her face fell, but she nodded. What do you want to know? For the next hour, I grilled her about her relationship with Clive, dates, locations, anything she might have overheard about his business dealings. To her credit, Susan answered everything without hesitation, even offering up information I hadn't thought to ask about. As our meeting drew to a close, Susan reached out, her hand hovering over mine. Jason, she said softly, I know you hate me right now, and you have every right to, but I want you to know how sorry I am. If I could take it all back, I jerked my hand away. But you can't, I said. What's done is done. Thank you for the information, Susan. I hope it helps nail that bastard to the wall. I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. What are you going to do? She asked, a hint of fear in her tone. I looked back at her, my face impassive. I'm going to destroy him, I said simply. And if you get caught in the crossfire, well, you made your bed. Now lie in it. With that, I walked away, leaving Susan alone on the bench, her hand still outstretched towards me. The final piece of our plan fell into place a few days later, when Randolph managed to hack into Clive's personal email. What we found, it was a smoking gun. We needed emails detailing his schemes, his affairs, even discussions about how to handle women who threatened to expose him. Armed with this treasure trove of evidence, Loomis was ready to publish his expose. But before he could, we got an unexpected visitor. I was at home, going over the final draft of Loomis's article, when there was a pounding on my door. I opened it to find Clive Adams himself, standing on my porch, his face red with anger. You think you can fuck with me, Cooper? He snarled, pushing past me into the house. You have no idea who you're messing with. I stood my ground, staring him down. I know exactly who I'm messing with, I said calmly. A coward who preys on vulnerable women. A fraud who's about to get exactly what he deserves. Clive's eyes narrowed. Is that so? Well, let me tell you something, you pathetic little man. I've ruined better men than you. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be lucky to get a job flipping burgers. I laughed, the sound cold and mirthless. Go ahead, try it. But before you do, you might want to check your email. I have a feeling you're going to be a bit too busy to worry about me. Confusion flickered across Clive's face, quickly replaced by dawning horror as he realized what I was implying. Without another word, he turned and fled, nearly tripping over himself in his haste to get to his car. I watched him go, a satisfaction settling over me. The trap was set. Now all we had to do was spring it. The next morning, Loomis's article hit the front page of every major newspaper in the state. The story spread like wildfire, picked up by national news outlets within hours. Clive Adams's carefully constructed world came crashing down around him. As the dust settled, I sat in my living room, watching the fallout on the news. Clive was facing multiple criminal charges. His company was in freefall, and the women he had used and discarded were coming forward in droves, each with their own story of manipulation and betrayal. Randolph appeared at my side, handing me a beer. "We did it, man," he said, clinking his bottle against mine. "We took that bastard down." I nodded, taking a long pull from the bottle. "Yeah," I said. "Yeah, we did." But as I watched Clive being led away in handcuffs, his face a mask of rage and disbelief, I realized something. The victory felt hollow. It didn't erase the pain of Susan's betrayal. It didn't fix my broken marriage or heal my shattered trust. Randolph seemed to sense my mood. "You okay, Jay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. I sighed. "I don't know, man. I thought this would feel better, like it would fix everything." He nodded sympathetically. "It's not that simple, bro. But hey, it's a start, right? You stood up for yourself. You didn't let them get away with it. That's something." I managed a small smile. "Yeah, I guess you're right." As the news cycle moved on to the next big story, I found myself standing at a crossroads. The past few months had changed me in ways I was only beginning to understand. I was harder now, less trusting, but I was also stronger. I had survived the worst betrayal imaginable and come out the other side. Now, it was time to figure out what came next. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt ready to face it. Whatever life threw at me next, I knew I could handle it. After all, I'd already survived the worst. Everything else was just details. The morning Clifton's article hit the newsstands. I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing incessantly. Bleary-eyed, I fumbled for it, squinting at the screen. Dozens of missed calls and messages. What the hell? I opened the first message, a link to an online news article. The headline made my heart race. Tech mogul Clive Adams exposed. A web of affairs, fraud, and intimidation. Holy shit, I muttered, scrolling frantically through the article. There it all was, laid out in black and white. Clifton had done a masterful job, weaving together the evidence we'd gathered into a damning expose. Photos, email excerpts, financial records, it was all there. My phone buzzed again. "Randolph, you seeing this?" His excited voice came through as soon as I answered. "Yeah," I said, still trying to process it all. Wow. It's fucking beautiful is what it is," Randolph crowed. "That bastard's going down, Jay. We did it." A smile spread across my face. "Yeah, we did." As the day wore on, the story exploded. It seemed like every news channel, every website, every radio station was talking about nothing but Clive Adams and his spectacular fall from grace. Around noon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Clifton standing there, looking haggard but triumphant. "Quite a shitstorm we've kicked up," he said by way of greeting. I nodded. ushering him inside. That's one way of putting it. Come in. Have a beer. You look like you could use one. We settled in my living room. The TV muted in the background as talking heads dissected every aspect of the scandal. So, I said, taking a long pull from my beer, what's the fallout looking like? Clifton's eyes gleamed. It's beautiful, kid. Adams Enterprises stock is in free fall. Half his board has resigned already. And get this, his wife filed for divorce this morning. Apparently, she's known about some of his indiscretions for years, but this was the last straw. I snorted. Can't say I blame her. Any word from the man himself. Radio silence so far, Clifton said. But my sources tell me he's holed up with his lawyers, trying to figure out how to save his ass. Good luck with that. Just then, my phone rang. Unknown number. With a sense of trepidation, I answered. Hello. You think you're clever, don't you? Clive's voice, tight with barely controlled rage, came through the speaker. You and that hack journalist friend of yours? I put the phone on speaker, exchanging a glance with Clifton. I don't know what you're talking about, Clive. I said coolly. Don't play dumb with me, you little shit, he snarled. I know you're behind this. You've made a big mistake. Cooper, I'm going to destroy you. I laughed, the sound harsh and mirthless. Destroy me? With what, Clive? Your reputation's in tatters. Your company's tanking. Face it, you're finished. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Clive hissed. I still have friends in high places. When I'm done with you, you'll be lucky to get a job flipping burgers. Bring it on, I growled. I'm not afraid of you, Clive. You're nothing but a bully and a coward, and now the whole world knows it. I hung up, my hand shaking slightly as I set the phone down. Clifton whistled low. Well, that was intense. You okay? I nodded, taking a deep breath. Yeah, I'm good. It's all becoming real, you know? He clapped me on the shoulder. I get it. But listen, kid, you did good. We exposed the predator. Whatever happens next, remember that. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from my boss at the drilling company. Need to see you in my office tomorrow morning. Urgent. I showed Clifton the message, a sinking feeling in my gut. Looks like Clive wasn't bluffing about having friends in high places. Clifton's face hardened. You knew this might happen. You ready for it. I squared my shoulders, meeting his gaze. Bring it on. I'd rather flip burgers with a clear conscience than work for people in Clive's pocket. The next morning, I walked into my boss's office with my head held high. Sit down, Jason, he said, not meeting my eyes. I remained standing. I'll stand, thanks. What's this about, Frank? He sighed, finally looking up at me. You know what it's about. This whole mess with Clive Adams. The company's getting a lot of heat, Jason. Investors are nervous. We need to distance ourselves. You're suspending me, I said flatly. Frank nodded, looking uncomfortable. Just until this all blows over. It's nothing personal, you understand. It's just business. I laughed, the sound bitter. Nothing personal? I exposed the fraud, and I'm the one being punished? That's rich, Frank. Jason, please, he pleaded. My hands are tied here. Adam still has a lot of pull in this industry. If we don't play ball. I held up a hand, cutting him off. Save it. I don't want to hear your excuses. I pulled a USB drive from my pocket and tossed it on his desk. That contains documented evidence of every dealing this company has ever had with Clive Adams. Every contract, every email, every under-the-table agreement. I'd think very carefully about your next move, Frank. His face paled as he stared at the innocuous-looking thumb drive. Are you threatening me, Jason? I smiled, all teeth and no warmth. Not at all. Just giving you all the facts so you can make an informed decision. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some packing to do. I walked out of his office without a backward glance, ignoring the stares and whispers of my co-workers as I cleared out my desk. Let them talk. I knew I'd done the right thing, and that was all that mattered. As I drove home, my phone rang. Susan's number flashed on the screen. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. "What do you want, Susan?" Her voice was shaky, on the verge of tears. "Jason, please. I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please," she begged. "Everything's falling apart. I don't know what to do. You're the only one who might understand." Against my better judgment, I found myself agreeing to meet her at a coffee shop downtown. When I arrived, I almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the polished, put-together woman I'd married. In her place sat a pale, disheveled figure, her eyes red-rimmed and haunted. "You look like hell," I said bluntly, sliding into the seat across from her. She attempted a weak smile. "Hello to you, too. What do you want, Susan?" I asked, cutting to the chase. "I'm not here to hold your hand or listen to your excuses." Her face crumpled. "I know. I didn't know where else to turn. Everyone's turned their backs on me. My friends, my co-workers. Even my own mother won't return my calls." I leaned back, regarding her coolly. "And what did you expect? You made your bed, Susan. Now you have to lie in it." "I know," she whispered. "I know I screwed up. But Jason, you have to believe me, I never meant for any of this to happen. Clive, he wasn't who I thought he was." I snorted. "No shit. He's a manipulative bastard who preys on vulnerable women. And you fell for it hook, line, and sinker." Anger flashed in her eyes. "That's not fair. You don't know what it was like. How he made me feel. How he—" "Save it." I cut her off. "I'm not interested in your justifications. You had a choice, Susan. You chose him over me, over our marriage. Everything that's happened since then, that's on you." She deflated, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You're right. I know you're right. I don't know what to do now. I'm pregnant, alone, and everyone hates me." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the pain she put me through, the lies, the betrayal. My heart hardened. "That's not my problem anymore," I said, standing up. "You made your choices, Susan. Now you have to live with them." As I walked away, I heard her call out, "Jason, wait." I paused, looking back at her. "What? I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For everything." I nodded once, acknowledging her words without accepting them. "Goodbye, Susan." As I walked out of the coffee shop, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It wasn't forgiveness. I didn't think I'd ever be able to forgive her fully. But it was closure. A final chapter, closing on that part of my life. My phone buzzed with a text from Randolph. News just in. Clive's being brought in for questioning by the feds. "It's happening, man." A smile spread across my face. The wheels of justice were turning. Slowly, perhaps, but inexorably. Clive's day of reckoning was coming, and I'd be there to watch him fall. The weeks following Clive's exposure were a whirlwind. I found myself caught in a legal maelstrom, juggling depositions, meetings with lawyers, and fending off increasingly desperate attempts by Clive's team to discredit me. Through it all, Randolph stood by my side, a constant source of support and strategic thinking. We were in his home office, poring over some financial documents when he broached a subject I'd been avoiding. "You know," he said carefully, "we might need to consider bringing Susan in on this." I stiffened, my jaw clenching. "Absolutely not." Randolph held up his hands placatingly. "Hear me out, Jay. She was closer to Clive than anyone. She might know things, details that could be crucial to nailing this bastard once and for all." I shook my head vehemently. "No way. I'm not letting her anywhere near this. She's made her bed. Let her lie in it." "I get it, man. I do," Randolph said. "But think about it. If her testimony could put Clive away for good." I slammed my hand down on the desk, making him jump. I said, "No, Randolph. End of discussion." He nodded, backing off. All right. It was just a thought." We lapsed into an uncomfortable silence, the only sound the shuffling of papers. After a few minutes, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hello." I answered warily. "Jason? It's Madeline. Madeline Reeves. We met at the—" I remember. I cut her off. Madeline was another of Clive's victims, the one we'd used to get the damning recording. "What's going on?" Her voice was tight with tension. "I need to talk to you. In person. It's important." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Madeline in a quiet corner of a local park. She looked nervous, constantly glancing over her shoulder. "What's this about, Madeline?" I asked. She took a deep breath. "Clive contacted me. He wants me to recant my statement. Says if I do, he'll make it worth my while." My blood ran cold. "He's trying to buy you off." She nodded miserably. "I don't know what to do, Jason. I'm scared. You don't know what he's capable of." I leaned forward, my voice low and intense. "Listen to me, Madeline. I know exactly what he's capable of. That's why we can't let him win. If you back down now, he'll just keep doing this to other women. Is that what you want?" Tears sprang to her eyes. "No, of course not. But what if he comes after me? After my family?" I reached out, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "We won't let that happen. I promise you, Madeline, we're going to bring him down. But we need your help to do it. Can you be strong for just a little longer?" She wiped her eyes, squaring her shoulders. I think so. Yes, I can do this." I nodded approvingly. "Good. Now, I need you to tell me everything, every detail of your conversation with Clive. We're going to use this against him." As Madeline talked, laying out Clive's clumsy attempts at witness tampering, a plan began to form in my mind. We could use this. Turn Clive's desperation against him. I was so engrossed in our conversation that I didn't notice the figure approaching until a shadow fell over us. I looked up, my blood turning to ice. Susan stood there, one hand resting protectively on her swollen belly. Her eyes darted between me and Madeline, a mixture of hurt and anger on her face. "Well," she said, her voice brittle, "isn't this cozy?" I stood slowly, positioning myself between Susan and Madeline. "It's not what you think, Susan." She laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Oh, and what exactly am I thinking, Jason? That you've moved on awfully quickly? That while you're busy destroying my life, you're cozying up to other women?" Madeline started to speak, but I silenced her with a look. This was my mess to handle. "You don't get to play the victim here, Susan," I said, my voice low. "You gave up that right when you decided to screw around with Clive. Madeline is helping us build a case against him. That's all." Susan's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I made a mistake, Jason. How many times do I have to say I'm sorry?" I felt a flicker of pity, quickly extinguished by the memory of her betrayal. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Susan. Not this time." She wiped her eyes, her expression hardening. "Fine, if that's how you want to play it. But remember this, Jason, I know things. Things about Clive that could blow this whole case wide open. If you want my help, you're going to have to give me something in return." I stared at her, hardly recognizing the woman I'd once loved. "Are you blackmailing me?" She shrugged, a cold smile playing at her lips. "Call it what you want, but think about it, Jason. I'm offering you a chance to take Clive down for good. All I'm asking for is a fair shake in the divorce. Drop the alimony demands, split our assets 50-50ths. That's my offer." I felt a surge of anger, my fists clenching at my sides. "You've got some nerve, Susan, after everything you've done." "Save it," she cut me off. "I'm not the naive little wife anymore, Jason. I've learned a thing or two from Clive. So, what's it going to be?" Do we have a deal? I glared at her, my mind racing. As much as I hated to admit it, she might have information we needed, but could I trust her? I'll think about it, I said finally. But don't push me, Susan. You're on thin ice as it is. She nodded, seemingly satisfied. Fair enough. You know how to reach me when you've made your decision. As she walked away, I turned back to Madeline, who was watching the exchange with wide eyes. I'm sorry you had to see that, I said wearily. She shook her head. No, I think I understand now why you're doing all this. It's not just about taking down Clive, is it? It's personal. I nodded. Yeah, it's personal. But that doesn't change what needs to be done. Clive needs to be stopped no matter what. Madeline stood, gathering her things. I understand, and I'm with you, Jason. Whatever you need. As I watched her walk away, my mind was already racing, formulating our next move. Susan's offer hung in the air, a tempting but dangerous proposition. I knew I needed to tread carefully. Back at Randolph's place, I filled him in on the encounters with both Madeline and Susan. Randolph let out a low whistle. Damn, man, that's a lot to process. What are you thinking? I paced the room. I don't know. Susan's offer, it could be a game changer. But can we trust her? Hell no, Randolph said emphatically. That woman's proven she can't be trusted. But he paused, considering. Maybe we can use this. Play her game, but on our terms. I nodded slowly, a plan forming. You're right. We'll make her think we're playing ball, but we'll be ready for any double-cross. Over the next few days, we carefully orchestrated our approach. I reached out to Susan, agreeing to meet and discuss her terms. The meeting was set for a neutral location, a conference room, at our lawyer's office. When I arrived, Susan was already there, looking composed but nervous. Our lawyer, Hugo Jacobs, sat at the head of the table, his face impassive. Let's get down to business, I said, taking a seat. You said you have information that could help our case against Clive. I'm listening. Susan leaned forward, her voice low. Clive's not just a womanizer. He's involved in some seriously shady business deals. Money laundering, insider trading, you name it. I've seen documents, overheard conversations. I can prove it. I exchanged a glance with Hugo, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Art, I said carefully, and in exchange you want a fair divorce settlement. Is that all? She hesitated, then shook her head. There's one more thing. I want immunity. Whatever comes out about Clive, I don't want to be implicated. I was just a pawn in his game, Jason. You have to believe that. I felt a surge of anger but forced it down. That's not my call to make, Susan. But if your information is as good as you say, I'm sure the DA will be willing to cut a deal. She nodded, seemingly satisfied. All right then, do we have an agreement? I stood, extending my hand. We have an agreement. But let me be clear, Susan. If you're playing us, if this is some kind of trick, I will not hesitate to bury you right alongside Clive. Understood. She flinched at the steel in my voice but took my hand. Understood. As we left the meeting, Hugo pulled me aside. You positive about this, Jason? Trusting her is a big risk. I nodded. I know, but it's a risk we have to take. Just make sure everything's airtight on the legal side. I don't want any surprises. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Susan came through with her information, providing a treasure trove of evidence against Clive. Bank statements, recorded conversations, even photos of Clive meeting with known criminals. It was more than we dared hope for. Randolph and I worked tirelessly with Clifton and the legal team, building an ironclad case. The net was closing in on Clive, and we could all feel it. Then, just as we thought we had everything under control, the other shoe dropped. I was at home, going over some documents when my phone rang. It was Clifton, his voice tight with urgency. Jason, turn on the news. Now. I fumbled for the remote, flicking on the TV. My heart sank as I saw Clive's face plastered across the screen, his trademark smug smile in place. Allegations against me are completely false, he was saying. This is nothing more than a smear campaign orchestrated by a disgruntled ex-employee and his unstable wife. I have evidence that will exonerate me completely, and I look forward to my day in court. I swore loudly, my fist slamming into the coffee table. How the hell did this happen? We had him. Clifton's voice was, I don't know, man, but we need to regroup fast. This could blow the whole case wide open. I nodded, my mind already racing. All right, call Randolph, get Hugo on the line. We need to meet now. An hour later, we were all gathered in Hugo's office, the atmosphere tense. All right, let's break this down, Hugo said, ever the voice of reason. What exactly is Clive claiming? Randolph, who had been furiously typing on his laptop, spoke up. He's saying all the evidence against him was fabricated, that Jason and Susan conspired to frame him out of revenge. I felt the blood drain from my face. That's insane. We have solid proof. Susan's testimony. Hugo held up a hand, his expression grave. About that, I just got off the phone with Susan's lawyer. She's recanting her statement. The room erupted in chaos. I stood, my chair clattering to the floor behind me. What? How could she? That bitch. I'll kill her. Jason, calm down, Hugo said firmly. This isn't over. We still have the original evidence, the testimonies from the other women. We can fight this. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think rationally. You're right. You're right. So, what's our next move? Clifton spoke up, his eyes gleaming with that investigative fire I'd come to recognize. We need to find out what Clive has on Susan, why she flipped. There's got to be more to this story. Randolph nodded in agreement. I can dig into their recent communications, see if there's any trail we can follow. Do it, I said. Whatever it takes. We've come too far to let Clive slip away now. As we dispersed, each with our assigned tasks, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were missing something, some crucial piece of the puzzle that would make everything fall into place. Little did I know, that missing piece was about to reveal itself in the most unexpected way. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension. I sat at the plaintiff's table, Hugo at my side, as we waited for the proceedings to begin. Across the aisle, Clive sat with his team of high-priced lawyers, looking smug and confident. As the judge called the court to order, I couldn't help but glance at Susan, sitting in the gallery. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and I was surprised to see fear in her gaze. Not the fear of someone about to be exposed as a liar, but something deeper, more primal. The trial began, with both sides presenting their opening arguments. Hugo was masterful, laying out our case with precision and passion. But Clive's lawyer was good too, spinning a tale of conspiracy and false accusations that had the jury looking uncertain. Then came the moment we'd all been dreading. Susan was called to the stand. As she was sworn in, I leaned over to Hugo. This is it, I whispered. If she sticks to her recanted statement, we're screwed. Hugo nodded. Let's hope your ex-wife has an attack of conscience. Clive's lawyer approached Susan, his smile predatory. Mrs. Cooper, can you please tell the court about your relationship with Mr. Adams? Susan's voice was barely audible as she began to speak. Clive and we had an affair. It lasted for about a year. And during this time, did Mr. Adams ever force you to do anything against your will? Susan hesitated, her eyes darting to Clive, then to me. No, she said finally. Everything was consensual. I felt my heart sink. She was sticking to the script, just as we'd feared. Clive's lawyer pressed on. Mrs. Cooper, in your original statement, you claimed that Mr. Adams had coerced you into the affair by threatening your husband's career. Do you stand by that statement? The courtroom held its breath. Susan looked like she might be sick. Suddenly, she burst into tears. I can't do this anymore, she sobbed. I can't keep lying. The judge banged his gavel as the courtroom erupted in whispers. Order! Order in the court. Susan looked directly at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. Jason, I'm so sorry. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. My mind raced. What truth? What was she talking about? Mrs. Cooper, the judge said sternly, if you have something to say, please address the court. Susan took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. Your Honor, I'd like to change my testimony. The truth is, Clive Adams did coerce me into an affair, but it wasn't just threats to Jason's career. He threatened to expose some financial irregularities at the company where I worked, irregularities that I had helped cover up. The courtroom exploded into chaos. Clive's face turned an alarming shade of red as he shouted at his lawyers. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. I sat there, stunned. Financial irregularities? Susan had been involved in something illegal? Hugo grabbed my arm. This changes everything, he hissed. If we can corroborate her story. But I was barely listening. My eyes were locked on Susan as she continued her testimony, laying out a sordid tale of corporate fraud, blackmail, and manipulation. She painted a picture of Clive as a master puppeteer, using people's weaknesses and mistakes to bend them to his will. He knew about the discrepancies in our books, Susan said, her voice stronger now. He threatened to expose me if I didn't do what he wanted. At first, it was just information about the company. Then he wanted more. I felt a mixture of emotions washing over me, anger at Susan for her deception, disgust at Clive's manipulations, and a grudging admiration for her courage in finally coming clean. Clive's lawyer was on his feet, objecting vehemently. Your Honor, this is all hearsay. We have no proof of these alleged threats or financial irregularities. But Susan wasn't finished. There's proof, she said firmly. I kept records, emails, recordings of phone calls. I was afraid that one day Clive might turn on me, so I protected myself. The judge peered down at Susan. Mrs. Cooper, are you willing to turn over these records to the court? Susan nodded. Yes, Your Honor. They're in a safe deposit box. I can have them here within the hour. As the judge called for a recess to retrieve and review the new evidence, I sat there, my mind reeling. Hugo was already on his phone, barking orders to his team to get their hands on those records as quickly as possible. I barely noticed when Randolph slid into the seat next to me. Holy shit, man, he whispered. Did you have any idea? I shook my head, still in shock. None. I can't believe she kept this from me all this time. Randolph squeezed my shoulder. Hey, look at the bright side. This could be the nail in Clive's coffin. I nodded slowly. You're right. Let's make sure those records get here safely. I wouldn't put it past Clive to try something desperate. The next hour was tense as we waited for Susan's evidence to arrive. I couldn't help but notice Clive huddled with his lawyers, his face a mask of barely controlled panic. Good, I thought. Let him sweat. When court reconvened, the atmosphere was electric. Susan's records had arrived, and the prosecution team had been poring over them. The look on the DA's face told me all I needed to know. We had him. What followed was a legal bloodbath. Email after email, recording after recording, all laying bare Clive's web of deceit and manipulation. It wasn't just Susan. There were communications with other employees, other companies, a vast conspiracy of fraud and coercion. I watched as Clive's face grew paler with each new piece of evidence. His lawyers looked shell-shocked, clearly unprepared for this turn of events. As the day wore on, it became clear that the tide had turned decisively in our favor. The jury's expressions shifted from skepticism to outrage as the full extent of Clive's crimes was revealed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judge called an end to the day's proceedings. As we filed out of the courtroom, I caught sight of Clive being led away by his lawyers. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and I saw something I'd never seen in Clive Adams before. Fear. Outside, surrounded by a sea of reporters. I felt a hand on my arm. It was Susan. "Jason," she said softly, "can we talk? Please." I hesitated, torn between anger at her deception and gratitude for her eventual honesty. Finally, I nodded. "All right, but not here." We found a quiet corner away from the media frenzy. Susan looked exhausted. The weight of her secrets finally lifted. "I'm so sorry," she began. "I know that doesn't even begin to cover it, but I never meant for any of this to happen." I sighed. "Why didn't you tell me, Susan, about the financial problems, about Clive's blackmail? We could have faced it together." She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I was scared, ashamed. I thought I could handle it on my own, fix things before anyone found out. By the time I realized how deep I was in, it was too late." I felt a flicker of the old affection I'd once had for her, quickly tempered by the memory of her betrayal. "It's not an excuse, Susan. You still chose to have an affair, to lie to me for months." "I know," she whispered, "and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But Jason, you have to believe me, everything I said in there today was the truth. Clive, he's a monster. He uses people, discards them when he's done. I was just another pawn in his game." I studied her face, searching for any sign of deception, but all I saw was exhaustion and remorse. "All right," I said finally, "I believe you. But Susan, this doesn't change anything between us. Too much has happened. Too many lies." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I understand. I hope that maybe someday you can forgive me." As I watched her walk away, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief that the truth was finally out, anger at the years of deception, and a sadness for what might have been. Randolph appeared at my side, his face serious. "You okay, man?" I took a deep breath, squaring my shoulders. Yeah, I'm okay. It's been one hell of a day, but we're close, Rand. We're so close to ending this." He nodded, a smile on his face. "Damn right we are. Clive Adams is going down, and we're going to be there to watch him fall." As we walked away from the courthouse, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. The road ahead was still uncertain, the legal battle far from over. But for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Justice was finally within reach, and I was determined to see it through to the end. The call came late one evening, as I was settling in for another night of restless sleep. The number on my phone made me pause. It was Shelley, Susan's mother. We hadn't spoken since the trial, and a sense of unease washed over me as I answered. "Jason, it's Shelley. We need to talk. Can you meet me?" Her voice was tight with tension, and I felt my guard immediately go up. "What's this about, Shelley?" "Not over the phone." "Please, Jason. It's important." 20 minutes later, I found myself sliding into a booth at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. Shelley was already there, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee, her eyes darting nervously around the nearly empty room. "Thanks for coming," she said as I sat down. I didn't know who else to turn to. I studied her face, noticing the dark circles under her eyes, the worried lines etched deeper than I remembered. "What's going on, Shelley? Is this about Susan?" She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "Oh, Jason, I've been such a fool. We all have." "What are you talking about?" Shelley took a deep breath, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Susan, she hasn't changed. All that remorse, that whole act during the trial, it was all a lie." I felt my jaw clench, anger rising in my chest. "What do you mean a lie?" "She's been playing us, Jason. All of us. The apologies, the tears. It was all just to get a fair divorce settlement and to distance herself from Clive's crimes." I leaned back, processing this information. Part of me wasn't even surprised I'd learned the hard way just how manipulative Susan could be. "How do you know this?" Shelley's eyes darted around the cafe again before she leaned in closer. "Because she's not alone. She's been seeing someone Clive's brother, Jordan Adams. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd heard of Jordan during the investigation. Into Clive, he was known to be just as ruthless as his brother, if not more so. You positive about this? I asked, my mind already racing with the implications. Shelley nodded miserably. I overheard them talking. They're planning something, Jason. Something to do with you. I think they want to hurt you. I sat back, my mind whirling. Just when I thought this nightmare was finally over, it seemed a new chapter was beginning. Why are you telling me this, Shelley? I asked, searching her face. Susan's your daughter. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Because I can't stand by and watch her destroy more lives. I should have spoken up sooner. Should have seen what was happening with Clive. I won't make that mistake again. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. Thank you for telling me, Shelley. I know that couldn't have been easy. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Just be careful, Jason. Susan and Jordan, they're dangerous. I'm afraid of what they might do. As I left the cafe, my mind was already formulating a plan. I needed to alert the authorities, needed to protect myself. But first, I had a call to make. Randolph? It's me. We've got a problem. I filled him in on what Shelley had told me, my voice tight with tension. Jesus Christ, Randolph swore. Just when we thought it was over. What's the plan, Jay? First things first, we need to alert the police. If Susan and Jordan are really planning something, we need to get ahead of it. On it, Randolph said. I could hear him typing furiously in the background. I'll start digging into Jordan Adams. See what I can find. You be careful, man. These people are bad news. I know, I said. Trust me, I'm not taking any chances. The next morning, I found myself sitting across from Detective Simmons, the lead investigator on Clive's case. I laid out everything Shelley had told me, watching as his expression grew more serious with each passing minute. This is serious, Mr. Cooper, he said when I'd finished. We'll look into it right away. In the meantime, I'd advise you to be extra cautious. Maybe consider staying with a friend for a few days. I shook my head. No, I'm not going to let them chase me out of my own home. Just keep me updated, all right. As I left the police station, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every passing car, every stranger on the street seemed suddenly suspicious. I quickened my pace, eager to get back to the relative safety of my house. But as the days passed with no sign of Susan or Jordan, I began to wonder if Shelley had been mistaken. Maybe she'd misunderstood what she'd overheard. Maybe the attack, when it came, caught me completely off guard. I was walking to my car after a late night at work, my mind preoccupied with a challenging project. The parking lot was nearly empty, the overhead lights casting long shadows across the asphalt. I heard the footsteps too late. As I turned, a fist connected with my jaw, sending me sprawling. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard a familiar voice. Hello, Jason. Miss me? I looked up, blinking away the stars in my vision, to see Susan standing there. And next to her, his fist still clenched, stood a man I assumed must be Jordan Adams. Susan, I spat, struggling to my feet. What the hell is this? She smiled, but it was a cold, empty expression that sent chills down my spine. Consider this a warning, darling. You should have left well enough alone. Jordan stepped forward, his bulk looming over me. You cost my brother everything, he growled. Now it's time to return the favor. Before I could react, his fist slammed into my stomach, driving the air from my lungs. I doubled over, gasping, as blow after blow rained down on me. Through the haze of pain, I heard Susan's voice, cold and detached. If you go to the police again, if you try to interfere with our plans in any way, well, let's just say this little encounter will seem like a love tap in comparison. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I knew, I was alone in the parking lot, my body aching, the taste of blood in my mouth. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone, dialing 911. As I waited for the ambulance, a determination settled over me. Susan and Jordan might think they'd won, might think they'd scared me into submission, but they'd just made the biggest mistake of their lives. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of the heart monitor and the low murmur of the TV in the corner. I lay there, my body a mass of bruises and bandages, my mind racing with plans for revenge. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Randolph entered, his face a mixture of concern and barely contained anger. "Jesus, Jay," he said, taking in my battered appearance. "They really did a number on you." I tried to sit up, wincing at the pain in my ribs. "Yeah, well, they're going to regret it." Randolph pulled up a chair, leaning in close. "I've been doing some digging on Jordan Adams. This guy's bad news, Jay. He's got connections to organized crime, suspected involvement in at least 2 murders. He makes Clive look like a Boy Scout." I nodded. All the more reason to take him down. "What's our next move?" "Whoa! Slow down there, Rocky," Randolph said, holding up his hands. "You're in no shape to be planning anything right now. You need to recover." I shook my head, ignoring the stab of pain the movement caused. "No time for that. Susan and Jordan think they've got me scared. Think I'll back off. We need to strike while they're feeling confident." Randolph studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, what did you have in mind?" Over the next few hours, as nurses came and went, Randolph and I hatched our plan. We'd track Susan and Jordan's movements, gather evidence of their criminal activities, and build a case that not even the best lawyer could poke holes in. "It's risky," Randolph said as he prepared to leave. "If they catch wind of what we're doing." I cut him off. "They won't. We'll be smarter this time, more careful." He nodded, squeezing my shoulder gently. "All right, man. I've got your back. Get some rest. We've got work to do." The next few weeks were a blur of activity. As soon as I was released from the hospital, Randolph and I threw ourselves into our investigation. We set up a makeshift command center in my living room, walls covered in photos, maps, and scraps of information. Randolph's tech skills proved invaluable. He managed to hack into Susan's email, giving us insight into her communications with Jordan. What we found was chilling. "Look at this," Randolph said one evening, gesturing to his laptop screen. "They're planning to leave the country. Fake passports, new identities, the works." I leaned in, scanning the email exchange. "When?" "3 days from now. They're booked on a flight to Buenos Aires." I felt a surge of adrenaline. "Then we've got 3 days to nail them. Can you track their movements?" Randolph grinned, cracking his knuckles. "Already on it. I've got a trace on Susan's phone. Wherever they go, we'll know about it." As the day of their planned departure drew nearer, the tension ratcheted up. We barely slept, subsisting on coffee and takeout as we pieced together our case. Finally, the morning of their flight arrived. Randolph and I sat in my car outside Susan's apartment, watching as she and Jordan loaded suitcases into a taxi. "This is it," I said, starting the engine as the taxi pulled away. "You ready for this?" Randolph nodded. "Born ready. Let's nail these bastards." We followed at a discreet distance, my hands tight on the steering wheel. As we neared the airport, I felt a familiar surge of anger and determination. This ends today, I thought. Suddenly, Randolph grabbed my arm. They're pulling over." Sure enough, the taxi had stopped at a gas station just a few miles from the airport. I watched as Jordan got out, heading inside the store. "This might be our only chance," I said, my voice tight with tension. "We need to confront them now, before they can disappear." Randolph looked at me, concern evident in his eyes. "You sure about this, Jay? Maybe we should call the cops? Let them handle it." I shook my head. "No time. It's now or never." Before Randolph could protest further, I was out of the car, striding purposefully towards the taxi. Susan saw me coming, her eyes widening in fear and surprise. "Jason," she gasped as I yanked open the taxi door. "What are you doing here?" I grabbed her arm, pulling her out of the car, ending this once and for all. Jordan chose that moment to exit the store. He froze for a split second when he saw me, then his face contorted with rage. "You!" he roared, charging towards us. What happened next was a blur of fists and fury. Jordan was bigger, stronger, but I was fueled by months of pent-up anger and betrayal. We grappled on the asphalt, trading blows as Susan screamed for us to stop. I tasted blood in my mouth, felt the sting of split knuckles, but I didn't relent. All the pain, all the humiliation of the past year poured out of me as I rained blows down on Jordan's face. In the distance, I heard sirens approaching. Randolph must have called the police after all. Good. Let them see what these two are really capable of. As the police cars screeched into the gas station parking lot, I delivered one final, devastating punch to Jordan's jaw. He went limp beneath me, and I staggered to my feet, my chest heaving. "Jason Cooper?" a voice called out. I turned to see Detective Simmons approaching, his hand on his holster. "Step away from him, please." I raised my hands, taking a step back. "Detective, glad you could join us." As the officers swarmed around us, cuffing both Jordan and Susan, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. It was over. Finally, truly over. Randolph appeared at my side, handing me a bottle of water. "You okay, man?" I nodded, wincing as I took a sip. My body ached, but it was a good ache. The ache of victory. Yeah, I'm good. We watched as Susan and Jordan were loaded into separate police cars. As they drove away, I felt the last of my anger drain away, replaced by a profound sense of relief. "Come on," Randolph said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Let's get you cleaned up. We've got one hell of a story to tell." The courtroom was packed, a low buzz of conversation filling the air as we waited for the proceedings to begin. I sat in the front row, Randolph beside me, my hands clasped tightly in my lap to hide their trembling. The door opened, and a hush fell over the room as Susan and Jordan were led in, both looking pale and disheveled in their prison jumpsuits. Susan's eyes met mine for a brief moment, and I saw a flicker of something. Regret? Fear? I couldn't tell, and frankly, I didn't care. "All rise," the bailiff called out as the judge entered. As the trial began, I listened with a sense of satisfaction as the prosecutor laid out the case against Susan and Jordan. The evidence we gathered, combined with the testimony of several witnesses, painted a damning picture of their crimes. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, her voice ringing out clearly, "the state will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the defendants, Susan Cooper and Jordan Adams, engaged in a conspiracy to commit fraud, assault, and attempted murder." I felt a surge of pride as Randolph was called to the stand. He testified about our investigation, his voice steady as he detailed the evidence we'd uncovered. As the trial progressed, I watched Susan and Jordan's faces. Jordan remained stoic, his jaw clenched, but Susan seemed to crumple more with each new piece of evidence presented. Finally, it was my turn to testify. As I took the stand, I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it, my chance to tell my story, to see justice done. "Mr. Cooper," the prosecutor began, "can you tell the court about the night you were attacked?" I took a deep breath, then launched into my account of that night in the parking lot. As I spoke, I saw Susan flinch, her eyes filling with tears. But I felt no pity, only a cold determination to see this through. "And what happened after the attack?" the prosecutor asked. "I was hospitalized," I said, my voice steady. But as soon as I was released, I knew I had to do something. These people, they weren't going to stop. So Randolph and I began our own investigation. The defense tried their best to discredit our testimony, to paint Susan and Jordan as victims of circumstance. But their efforts fell flat in the face of the overwhelming evidence against them. As the trial neared its end, I found myself holding my breath. Would the jury see through Susan's tears? Jordan's stoic facade? Would justice finally be served? The wait for the verdict was excruciating. Days passed, each one feeling longer than the last. Finally, we were called back to the courtroom. As the jury foreman stood, I felt Randolph's hand on my shoulder, a silent show of support. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendants guilty. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. On the charge of assault, we find the defendants guilty. Susan let out a sob, her shoulders shaking. On the charge of attempted murder, we find the defendants guilty. It was over. They were going away for a long, long time. As the judge read out the sentences, 25 years for Jordan, 15 for Susan, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was done. Finally, truly done. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by a sea of reporters, I felt a strange mix of emotions wash over me. Relief, exhaustion, and a sense of satisfaction. "Mr. Cooper, how do you feel about the verdict?" a reporter shouted, thrusting a microphone in my face. I paused, considering my words carefully. "Justice has been served," I said finally. "That's all I have to say." As I pushed through the crowd, Randolph at my side, I caught sight of Shelley standing at the edge of the throng. Our eyes met, and I saw a mixture of grief and relief in her gaze. I gave her a small nod, acknowledging the role she played in bringing this chapter to a close. "You okay, man?" Randolph asked as we made our way to the car. I nodded, feeling the tension of the past months finally start to ebb away. Yeah, I think I am. The next few weeks passed in a blur as I tried to adjust to life after the trial. The media frenzy eventually died down, and I found myself facing a future I hadn't dared to imagine before. One evening, as I sat on my back porch nursing a beer, Randolph came by. "So," he said, settling into a chair next to me, "what's next for Jason Cooper?" I took a long pull from my bottle, considering the question. Honestly, I'm not sure. Everything's been about Susan and Clive and Jordan for so long. I'm not sure I remember how to just live my life. Randolph nodded understandingly. "Well, have you thought about maybe getting out of town for a while? Fresh start and all that?" The idea took root in my mind, growing more appealing by the second. You know what? That's not a bad idea. Over the next few days, the plan took shape. I decided to sell my house, quit my job, and move to a small coastal town a few hours away, a place where nobody knew my name or my story. As I packed up my life, I came across old photos of Susan and me in happier times. For a moment, I felt a pang of not regret exactly, but a sadness for what might have been. Then I remembered everything that had happened, and the feeling passed. I tossed the photos in the trash without a second glance. The day of my departure arrived bright and clear. Randolph came to see me off, helping me load the last of my boxes into my truck. "You sure about this?" he asked as we stood in my now empty driveway. I nodded, feeling more certain than I had in months. "Yeah, I need this, Randy, a fresh start." He pulled me into a bear hug. "I'm gonna miss you, man. Don't be a stranger, all right?" "I won't," I promised. "And hey, you can come visit any time. I hear the fishing's great down there." As I drove away, watching my old life disappear in the rearview mirror, I felt a sense of possibility I hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to the journey. Weeks later, I stood on a cliff overlooking the ocean, the wind whipping through my hair. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. As I watched the waves crash against the rocks below, I felt the last of my anger and bitterness wash away. I thought about Susan, about Clive and Jordan, about all the pain and betrayal of the past year. But the memories no longer had the power to hurt me. They were just that, memories. A chapter of my life that was now firmly closed. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, I smiled. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was at peace. The future stretched out before me, full of possibilities, and I was ready to embrace whatever it might bring. I turned away from the ocean view and headed back to my new home, my steps light and purposeful. The old Jason Cooper, the man defined by his pain and his quest for vengeance, was gone. In his place stood a man who had weathered the storm and come out stronger on the other side. As I reached my front door, I paused for a moment, looking back at the darkening sky. "Goodbye, Susan," I whispered, not with malice or regret, but with finality. Then I stepped inside, closing the door on the past and opening it to whatever the future might hold. The wages of betrayal had been paid. Now it was time to collect on the promise of a new beginning. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.